Be the Talk, episode 143, featuring Edwin Edebiri. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Mr. Happiness, Edwin Edebiri. Edwin, are you ready to talk?
Let's do it.
Edwin Edebiri is the Chief Happiness Officer and the founder of the Happy Neighborhood Project and the I Am Happy Project. It's now in 64 cities in 19 countries. Edwin is also the pioneer of happiness as a skill. Edwin Edebiri, welcome to the talk.
Thank you for having me.
Your talk is called Happiness as a Default Position. I love it, and I love the idea of teaching happiness as a learnable skill. I learned a lot from your talk. I learned a couple of things about the 24-hour promise. I learned about the 3-minute rule, and I learned how to not let my past or my present rob me of my future joy. So please take us behind the talk.
Well, basically, happiness as a default position clearly puts you in a mindset that you deserve to be happy. Okay, and nobody is trying to play games with you. Nobody is trying to set you up. It's just that life is going to throw you curve from now and then. How you respond to that is going to determine how well you proceed. And so if you've trained yourself over time that no matter what, that you would operate better when you are happy than when you are not happy, then you begin to set yourself and your happiness in a default position.
Happiness is a default position, for sure.
Yeah. So the bottom line is this, and I tell people everywhere I go, you have options, okay? Anytime something happens to you, you are going to do better if you are happy than if you are not happy. So it's not a matter of, well, you have no choice. It's just a matter of saying, okay, if I'm going to get a better result, what mode am I supposed to be? What frame of mind am I supposed to be? We know that if you are unhappy, things are going to get worse before they get even worse, okay? And if you are happy, things tend to turn around the curve. So that is the whole gist behind my conversation.
Sure. And people are familiar with, many people familiar with the law of attraction and this idea that you kind of have a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whatever you tend to believe about life, you're going to get whatever you see. And you're going to just fall into either greater levels of sadness, despair, frustration, or happiness and joy and contentment, depending on where you steer your mind. So I love this. Happiness as a default position. You did give it, I forgot to mention, at TEDx, University of Las Vegas. So how did the audience respond to you? What was the impact in the room that day, Edwin?
It was awesome. I mean, the audience was electrifying, and just being able to convey a message that typically is people understand the value of happiness. They do. And so my role is to remind people of why they're supposed to be happy. And the audience was just like marvelous. I mean, they walk out feeling like, wow, I think I got it, and so it's kind of nice when your message resonates like that with the audience. Yeah.
Sure. And I mean, what an easy sales job for you. It's really not a sales job. We're all on the same team. Very few things in our society right now can you just kind of assume that people want, or, you can't assume politics or, religion or any of these divisive income levels sometimes, but you can assume that people pretty much want to be happy. And then you're connecting us with the psychology and the studies and the science behind that with real common sense and proven tools to help move us in that direction. I absolutely love it.
Absolutely. And Dalai Lama, His Holiness Dalai Lama said the purpose of life is to be happy. And so when we drill down why we do what we do, it comes to that fundamental. And I think that's why it's such a common denominator for all of us, in this world, because when it's all said and done, we might go about doing things differently, and we might come from different backgrounds. But when it's all said and done, our underlying motivation is for our own happiness and the happiness of our loved ones.
So, Edwin, I got to ask this question because you're Mr. Happiness. Were you always happy, or was there a time in your life where maybe you weren't Mr. Happiness? And can you just kind of take us quickly along that journey of where you might have come from in your emotional state and where you are now, and what the turning point was for you?
Well, I would say I'm been really fortunate. I have been happy practically all my life.
Okay.
So there was no period where I could say, oh, yeah, this is why, no.
I'm digging for a big dramatic story.
Eh? What?
I'm digging for a very dramatic story, and I guess the story isn't there.
No, there is no. I love it. No. Now, I don't know whether to say fortunately or unfortunately, but for me, fortunately, there is not.
Okay, fortunately not. Okay, well, yeah. There was still a path. You branded yourself as a happiness officer. So, how did you come to that realization, and what was that journey like for you?
Right. So I do a lot of meditation, and it was during the time of the recession around 2008 going into 2009. Sacramento area where we live was hard hit by the recession. And so to say things were tough would be understatement. And I do a lot of meditation. So one day I just got out of meditation feeling really happy, happier than my usual self. And I just went out on the street and I started talking to people about happiness. And in the beginning, I didn't really take it to be that big a deal. I just wanted to shift people's mind from all the negativity that was just going on around us into something more positive. Until one day I came across a young man, if you watch my TEDx, in Jack London Square. And I thought it was just going to be one of my normal, meet in. We talk for 2 or 3 minutes and I go my way. But it didn't end up like that. It ended up being about a 30-minute conversation, only to find out the next day that he was on his way to commit suicide. And I think that kind of changed the whole dynamics for me in terms of the level of seriousness that I put into what I was doing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a mission for you now because you understand the stakes, you understand what people are wrestling with, and it's not. I mean, it could sound for someone who has had a happy life for the most part. I could see how that could be overlooked. The level of despair and tragedy that so many people, including many of us, Talk Universe, struggle with. So I can see how that would really legitimize and justify and give you a real sense of mission. And I remember that from your talk. So I should have already done that. Watch the talk, folks. And
now, and when you even reflect now, and especially what is happening, there are 2 types of things that affect level of happiness. There is internal, and then there is external. Internal, we can make choices about. But Astana, we just don't have any control. When earthquake happen and people are suffering, you cannot help but suffer sometime, Mm-hmm. Or you hear all the shooting now that's going on in the high schools and stuff like that. It's very hard to say, oh, yeah, well, I'm still going to be happy. It's not happening to me. Anything that happened to another human being, to some extent affects all of us. And when I look at right now, you can trace back to when people start to plan what they are going to do is when they're totally disconnected with their level of happiness.
Yes.
And I tell people everywhere I go, I've never seen any human being that wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm so happy today, I'm going to take somebody else's life, Or I'm so happy today, I want to take my life. It just doesn't happen. It's mutually exclusive. So we have to put more effort in terms of teaching people how to be happy and the impact it's going to have on all of us.
Edwin, I love it. And I'm remembering something that I recall about you that I almost slipped my mind. And I don't know how that could happen because we're interviewing and we're interviewing. So you have interviewed over 1,000 people on this subject of happiness, and it almost slipped my mind, and I almost neglected to ask you, is that the Happiness Project? Is that what I'm describing here?
That is the I Am Happy project. Yes.
The I Am Happy project. Okay.
I Am Happy project. So that's how it all started. It became a fascinating thing. And I think you mentioned in your preview, when you've talked to that many people on a single subject, you start to see a pattern. You start to understand, why are people happy? You start to understand, why are people not happy? But more than that, you start to put together what people can do to actually increase their happiness. And I think that's where happiness as a skill really started to come about. And this is where my commitment, really the rest of my life is, really pioneering happiness as a skill, because I have seen it when I sat down in the corner of the street with people talking to them about happiness. Or when I go to the boardroom and pull somebody to the side and talk, or golf course, wherever I get a chance to interview people about happiness, there was something that always was basic that people can learn. And that's what I want to bring across, that if we take the time, and yes, psychologists tell us happiness is an emotion. And I get that. I'm not going to argue with that. But I'm also seeing it that there are certain skills that we can develop that can help us not only increase our level of happiness, but to sustain that level of happiness.
Well, and I love this because you've interviewed the people, you've developed a methodology of happiness, you've identified the trigger behaviors in a good way that can lead us to happiness as a skill. And I just love that you're sharing it with the world. We've been talking with Edwin Edebiri. He's Mr. Happiness. He's the Chief Happiness Officer, and we are going to be right back with him in just a moment for the Blitz Round. People ask, how could I start a 7-day-a-week podcast? It's because of what I've learned from my mentors. Some of the best mentors in history aren't around anymore. They've left hours of one-on-one mentoring behind in their books. Each month at Classics on Tap, I record a new chapter from a classic business book to help you make a difference. Download your first chapter at classicsontap.com. And we're back with Edwin Edebiri. It is time for the Blitz Round. Are you ready, Edwin?
I am ready.
So I'm about to ask Edwin a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and the performance of his talk about happiness as a default position. Here's the first question. Edwin, were you selected to speak or did you apply?
I was selected to speak.
Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
I would say a blender.
Okay. How so?
Because I'm not really good at memorizing. I've talked so much about happiness. So, I think the best way to answer that question is if you were in the audience when I did my rehearsal the night before, and my actual presentation was totally different.
Oh, I love it. Well, that's where it's a good topic to be talking about happiness. So, I got to ask you this question. Did you have nerves or were you in the zone or neither or both?
During the rehearsal, yes, I had nerves and I think it shows. But on the day off, I was in the zone.
What made the difference for you?
I think my wife gave me some very, very good feedback after the rehearsal, and it was like, "Hey, you got to bring your A game to this," you know. and so it seems like she didn't quite feel the rehearsal, and she have seen me and hear me talk about the subject so many times, so she could tell the difference, And so I went to bed that night and said, "Okay, I better bring my A game." And that's what I did the next day. Okay.
Well, what's a tip, technique, or a tool that helped you other than bringing your A game? I love that. The wife talks some sense into Mr. Happiness here, and he brings his A game. What's another tip, technique, or tool besides that?
I think it's just relaxing, just totally relaxing, knowing that, number one, people want to hear what you have to say. And two, again, being that I have talked so much about happiness, I felt comfortable. I know the subject very well. And so I feel like I'm the kind of person that can tell the story. So, yeah, it just relaxing became very crucial. Yeah.
Edwin, this is the cut for time question. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
I don't know. I really, because I didn't prepare that long to say, okay, this portion got to go. Like I said, when I came back the next day, I just was in the zone.
You just were
I
on.
don't feel like anything was cut off.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, if you haven't interviewed 1,000 people yet on any given subject, that might be a little tough to pull off. But after you've interviewed 1,000 people, after you've given, very similar talk that is engaging people, I mean, you've got a certain amount of, I would think, subconscious intelligence as to how to pull that together so that when your wife says, hey, bring your A game tomorrow, you can do that. So I'm wondering if you agree with me, or if you would explain that maybe a little differently, or maybe you're just lucky, or what would you say?
No, I think that's totally true. Because again, when you've talked to so many people, and here is one of the things that's really exciting about happiness. Even though we are so diverse, people are going to say we have 7 billion people in the whole world. The common denominator about happiness is so simple.
Yeah.
And so when you've talked to so many people about the same subject, that thread start to come together, and you find out that, wow, we are so similar, even though we are so diverse. And so putting together a speech like I did comes together very quickly, and all I have to really worry about is just be relaxed and just let it flow.
Edwin, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
During my talk, the speaker started to act up. And I don't know if you noticed, the crew, they were so on top of it. And somehow the overhead speaker was cracking. I don't know. Some people said I was too excited, so that my energy was feeding back to the equipment or something. But the crew, they noticed it about the same time that I noticed it. And so before it became a major issue, they were presenting me with a handheld device, and they were turning off my overhead. And so it just went smoothly after that.
All right, Talk Universe, that's when you know that you are very fortunate, or you've really selected a very good and been selected by a very good organization to speak when they're that on top of this stuff. Man, glad to hear it. And that's why we do this podcast, find out about some of these little dynamics that happen. We have been
And so my quick thing to that is this, in advice of somebody listening to this, don't get nervous. Okay, just don't get nervous. You trust yourself that you have prepared, but also trust the crew that are there to make this work. And we both have common goal. And the common goal is for this to come out well so the audience will enjoy it. So I totally trusted the crew, even though I didn't know exactly what they were going to do, but I knew they were professionals and they were thorough and they would somehow make it work, and they did.
So we've been enjoying this conversation with Edwin Edebiri. His website, you can find out at BeTheTalk.com. We'll have a link to that, and it is the happyneighborhoodproject.com. happyneighborhoodproject.com. Again, a link in the show notes page. His talk, Happiness as a Default Position, is also linked in the show notes page, and you can watch that and find out about all these wonderful practical techniques and tips for happiness as a learnable skill that you can incorporate in your life, and it's based on interviews with 1,000 people. Now, in a moment, we're going to be right back with Edwin with the final word of advice for Talk Universe. Everyone wants to change the world, but not everyone knows the first step. Before you can change the world with your talk, it has to be selected. So grab the templates, timelines, and tools that I use to get my talk selected at BeTheTalk.com. And we're back with Edwin Edebiri, Mr. Happiness. What is your final word of advice for Talk Universe?
Whatever that you are blessed to be passionate about, just know that there are people out there that can definitely benefit from it. That's your gift to yourself. The thing you are passionate about is a gift to you, but your ability to share it with the audience, with the population, is your gift to the audience.
Edwin Edebiri, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Nathan, thank you for all that you do, and keep up with it.
Thanks for listening to Be The Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.